Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. We are here for Harmonious Happy Hour this fine Sunday evening. And tonight, I'm going to be talking about, already going on, myths versus reality of Kundalini awakening. Tonight's going to be a little bit different, guys. Let me give you guys a little time to get in, since we are live, and let me get a little time to set up this because I am doing this just a little bit more formal than usual tonight, guys. Normally, I like this to be really relaxed and to be kind of conversative and for people to just share their own experiences of awakening and really be, able to participate. However, tonight's going to be something a little more formal. I am going to be talking about the myths versus reality of Kundalini awakening. And with that, I have my little board here. I hope it's able to be seen there. I think I got a little bit of shine, but I have my little board to kind of write down, 5 to 10 of the top myths of Kundalini awakening. So what had happened was, first, since we are going to have this be a little bit more formal than usual, I still want to do our routine of grabbing a nice beverage for happy hour. I have this sparkling red grape juice, so I'm going to put it in my little wine glass so I can feel a little bit elegant. So if y'all are out, like I said, usually I want this to be just everybody sharing their experiences and talking and having a conversation, not really having an authority on the matter, but us just all sharing our human experiences. But tonight is something that I want to do to cover some bases. So those of you who have followed my journey a little bit on my channel know that I had a Kundalini awakening pop off in 2016 after about 2 years of pre-awakening experiences, which I didn't know at that time that it was happening. I was journaling a lot about human transformation, and quite honestly, I thought it was metaphorical. And I just kind of felt, well, now I can describe it as an energy coming over me that was talking about human transformation, and a lot of metaphors about a butterfly in a cocoon. And I thought, oh, that's beautiful. That's a really nice metaphor. And yes, we do have to cocoon up and go into solitude and be willing to kind of rest and back away from our conditioning and participating in a very heavy way in the world. We kind of have to be able to back away from that. And that takes courage because a lot of us in our conditioning feel that we have to be contributing in this very, rigid set of rules, basically, regarding society. And if we don't do this every day and contribute in this, that, or the other way, we feel like we're not doing something, like we're not achieving. But so much of this life, we realize that in order to transform, that takes a lot of time. It takes energy. I think that's why people who are in a really busy state or really going after something in the worldly element, there's nothing wrong with that, because most certainly we're learning something about ourselves, even while going heavily after something in the earth realm. But when we're kind of done being the hamster on the wheel, or we've kind of put in our little bag and gathered all our little tools for what we want, then I think all of us come to a point where we're looking for something deeper. And it takes a little bit of courage, because we do have to kind of go off the beaten trail and not stay on that wheel and keep doing the things that we do to make us feel like we're, a contributing member, because people will ask us, what do you do? All the things that we do that people define themselves. What do you do for your job? Are you married? Do you have kids? All those kind of standard questions. Where are you from? Where do you live? What religion are you? What political group do you belong to? So we have all those kind of things that we use to define ourselves. And it takes courage to back away from all that. Let all the things of this world that we've used to kind of build on our persona, our personality, and our conditioning, and let it all drop away slowly but surely, in whatever process we're able to do that, and see what's left. What of us is left that is eternal and enduring when all the other material 3D earth realm stuff has fallen away? What is there? And so that's an exploration, and that's a process. And most certainly it isn't for half-hearted seekers. So I'm sure anybody that's been down a spiritual path and quests to know what's going on feels that, that it's not a half-hearted thing. You kind of have this, a lot of people that I talk to who have had a Kundalini awakening go their whole life saying like, that they've always been inquisitive, that they've always wanted to know what's going on. They've always felt this pull towards spirituality and the divine, and to know what's really going on in this realm. So it's definitely not a half-hearted quest. And it's not really anything that we do for fame or fortune or celebrity. It's certainly not something that someone does to exempt themselves from pain. It's more of a sinking into and allowing this whole earth human experience to come to the forefront and to deeply absorb and engage in that process without fear. Surely fear will be there, because so long as we're in this body structure, in this design that we incarnate into this body, we sign off to the rules that have to do with being a human being. So, okay, I think I've done enough of my babbling for now. So I will go ahead and get towards the myths versus the reality of Kundalini awakening. Let me have a little sip here, because I've already been blabbing my brains out. Thank you so much, guys. The thing with live is you guys have to hear my sips and my gurgles. Okay, I just want to set this up a little bit to make sure that you guys will be seeing both me and the board when I'm talking, and the board. Are we good-ish there? Okay, very good. So the first thing I want to say, guys, is when I first started releasing my videos around 2016, just a few months after I started having really intense Kriya activity. It first started out as physical. So initially I went through something that I've gone through a good share of my life, which was a stomach pumping kind of activity like this. And I had always thought that stomach pumping activity came with vertigo, when I got vertigo. And I didn't know if that was from an allergies that was coming about, but there would be a trigger, usually some sort of allergic reaction that would cause me to have vertigo. And then I thought that when the vertigo came along, the body would kind of start pumping as a way to ground itself and to deal with the feelings of the balance center being pushed on. And then it was kind of my body's way of reacting to the movement. So from the time I was 27 when the vertigo episode started until 33 when I actually had the Kundalini pop off, I had always thought to kind of calm down that pumping that was happening. I thought it was a result of stress. However, I later realized that it was actually the beginning stages of the energy moving from root to sacral to solar plexus. So usually that pumping motion comes from the solar plexus. Sacral chakra is more of a revolution moving. The body starts kind of moving like this, and you feel sort of like almost like a nervousness or an excitement, the way you might feel like, quote, butterflies in your stomach, but it's not necessarily that good of a sensation. It's more of a nervous sensation in that lower chakra, sacral pelvic area. And then oftentimes, along with that nervous feeling, it causes you to have to go to the bathroom, so excrete from the bowels. And that happens throughout the Kundalini purging. Somebody once described it as like a mop wringing out the internal organs. So plenty of people during the really high energy beginning stages, the first few years of the Kundalini awakening, can lose weight, because that energy is going through. We're going through Kriyas for a year, 2 years, even beyond, probably even daily. And the body is having to contort and do all these kind of weird things to get the energy up the chakra system. So it's best that the body be prepared for that sort of thing. So like I was saying, when I first released my raw Kriyas in 2016, it was a ballsy move and it was scary, but I allowed that to kind of move me through some of my fear states and my ego states of being judged. And also a big part of my awakening, and a big part of the clearing that I had to do with past pain and feelings of persecution from karmic persecution, from not being believed about Kundalini awakening, from not being believed about the process this is, and also very ancient pain from not being able to seek out the divine, to seek out fates, without without having people project, or religion or mankind that use some sort of paradigm to control. And throughout history, there's been a different sort of paradigm that was used to control. And it may have been politics, it may have been religion, but almost all the time throughout human history, there has been some form of thing that we have to transcend to get to our true spirit beings. And we can have a lot of pain and persecution regarding not having an honest journey. And if we are taking an honest journey, having a lot of people say, like, we're dumb, we're just not getting it, we didn't research hard enough, we just want to go our own way because we're egoic, or we think we know better than God. That's a lot of things that like religious people like to project onto other people. Oh, you think you know better than God. That was a really common one that the religious people around me tried to say whenever I'd attempt to go on an honest exploration. Okay, so during that time, I was afraid to put out my Kundalini Kriya videos and just show the raw process and what it truly looks like. And that fear was correct. It was a warning because it wanted to make sure that I was prepared. That fear allows you to prepare for whatever's coming your way. There's a difference between ignorance and fear. So we know that if we're ignorant of something, we're not likely to feel fear. But if we do know what we're up against, then we are going to feel fear, because we know that in order to transform, we're going to be brought through like really uncomfortable situations as human beings. So that's natural. So anyways, I got the divine guidance despite the intuitive guidance, despite having fears. And actually those fears did come true, because a lot of people projected a lot of things onto my raw Kundalini Kriyas. The very first one, they sexualized it a lot, but just to say, Kundalini Kriyas are the natural movements that come from us when the energy is rising. So it's only humans that project, whether it's ugly, pretty, raw, intense, sexual, etc. It's only us projecting our human egoic ideas onto it. And if you watch people's raw Kriyas, and you can kind of see what they're clearing out and what chakra they're moving through, it can be really intimidating, because you're seeing them in a very raw state. You're not seeing them covered up or showing what is comfortable to present to the world, right? So I got the divine guidance to create from where I stand, and to go ahead and put these videos out. And if people need to project, people can project. We do that every single day. As an artist, I was okay with people projecting anything of their experience onto us. If we see an artist do something, or anybody else that is very honest and transparent, we can feel triggered from our own chakra center very highly, and we can say, oh, a part of you is reflecting something back to me that I am highly uncomfortable with. I'm not ready to face that part. So in the first video, I really triggered people who had any sort of fears of lower chakra, primal, sexual, sensual energies, because to them, it was moving through all the chakras, and there was some shouting going on. There was a lot of solar plexus. It was moving through all of them. But the thing that people are usually going to, if they haven't seen it a lot in society, their mind's eye is going to draw to what they haven't seen. And in all likelihood, that's going to be that raw sexuality and sensuality. And if people aren't used to themselves expressing through that, If they have any fears of that lower chakra energy, perhaps from the divine feminine being taken advantage of, perhaps from other people saying they're attention seeking, or they're asking for trouble. Or I know one really important person in my life had said that from a young age they were feeling so cute and they put on this cute little costume, and their mother's friend, guy friend, was there and came home before their mother and put some unwanted advances on this very young individual. This person was about 16 years of age. And from then on, she felt that so long as she was cute and feeling herself and sexy, and if she showed that to the world, it was her fault if something bad happened to her. And so from that young, early childhood conditioning, she brought that with her throughout the rest of life, and it made her afraid. And so a lot of other things can come up from childhood or whatever experiences that we have at a sensitive time in our life that make us afraid of that. Envy is another thing. If somebody thinks like, oh, you're using your power from that area, like you're abusing it, or you're just trying to get attention from there can be a lot of, I'm just going to say it outright, although it's not something I would have done in my past, there can be issues of anger or jealousy, or they're not comfortable in their physical form. And if they see somebody expressing from their physical form in a way that they can tell they are comfortable and they don't shy away from it, and they're really in touch with that divine intelligence and that divine expression, and they don't have any triggers surrounding it, it can make them say, oh, no, you're reflecting something onto me that I'm not ready to deal with. I have fears and I have blockages there. And by interacting with you or watching you, it's something called mirror neurons in artists, that we hope, in art, we hope that the person who is looking can look at the drawing or the painting or the song or the dance, and they can feel exactly what the artist felt while having the inspiration of making that thing. And that's what we love about artists, because they bring us to a part in ourselves comfortably. And by kind of casting a spell on us usually through beauty. Usually we don't like if artists show us something ugly, but usually through some form of beauty, they can kind of cast a spell on us and take our hand and bring us through the threshold of something hard or difficult. And so that's one way that art kind of helps to heal and express. So in any case, as an artist, I was just fine with allowing other people to just have their own idea of what I was doing. However, as somebody who has gone through the authentic experience of Kundalini awakening, I realized and came through my spirit guidance that this is something that I need to use my throat chakra communication to be absolutely transparent about. This is not something that this is different than art, which is meant to either inspire or provoke, or something like drama channels, or if people just want raw attention and they want quantity instead of quality, they might just do things that are controversial and meant to provoke. If sharing my honest experience ends up to be controversial, I'm okay with that. It's part of my divine mission to have to get my internal fortitude strengthened and resolved so that I can stand that, so that I can have the ability to walk through that if I am being judged because my experience is controversial for society at that time. However, my main goal or desire is not to just provoke or just be controversial. As somebody who is in a Kundalini awakening, I prefer to be totally transparent about the experience. For anybody who either is on the path or interested in the path. So the first things that I want to say is that I did not know what a Kundalini awakening was when it happened to me. So all I was doing was journaling a lot and saying stuff about human transformation. But I absolutely did not know what a Kundalini awakening was. So one of the things that I get in my comments a lot is stuff like, trying to like mimic really what was being said, like oh, Kundalini awakening, it's a lie. It's something that Satan uses. They'll wrap it in a pretty bow, and Satan is the deceiver of all. And they'll wrap it in a pretty bow, and you'll eventually lose control and find out that you've been deceived. I couldn't have been deceived on something that I did not know was happening. So it's not like somebody said, go on a Kundalini awakening, you'll be able to levitate, you'll get fame, money, fortune, attention, celebrity. None of those things were promised. So one of the things I want to say about the videos that I get a lot of comments on, because the fact is I can't go through all of them individually and respond to them, but I want people to know that this is the best way that I can respond. When it first happened, I was in the middle of the storm, if you will, and I was taking all my energy and all the faucets that I have to be able to make it through the dark night of the soul and the energy upgrades. And I couldn't be communicating a lot about my journey. It's much better when you go through it and then you can meditate on it in hindsight and stuff like that. That's much better. So I was given the guidance to go ahead and share my experience, but not speak on it a lot until it has been matured and grounded and processed through me. So one of the comments, again, that I got a lot from people was, you've been deceived. This is going to promise you something and it won't deliver, and you'll lose control. So a few things I want to say about that. Kundalini awakening is not to have control. Religion is usually used more as a means to have control and to make us feel safe. But awakening is not something that makes us feel really safe. What it really does is gives us the strength and the fortitude and the faith centers to stand our ground and walk out into the fates and open up and say, you know what, life, I trust you. Whatever happens is fine. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be held. I'm going to be transformed. You know, and so that's that. Sorry, my puppy is communicating something over there. I need to take a little sip here. So that is totally okay. Sorry. So what I was saying in regards to that is that it doesn't give us more comfort in life. Spiritual awakening is not for comfort. Oh, you know what? I should be paying attention to my sorry, normally I want to be paying attention to the live here and see if anybody's commenting stuff. I'm sorry that I'm a little bit more like goal driven here. You guys will have to forgive me for that. And it's 23 minutes and I haven't even got into it yet. Sorry guys, not even most of it. So anyways, sorry, I got a little off track there. So what I was saying is religion is the thing that makes us more comfortable. A lot of people that I observed regarding religion that really projected a lot of things onto me said, you know, I want to have a book, or the Bible specifically. I want to have something that I can always, anytime I get into life and I have a question, I want the security of knowing I can go to a book. I can go to something that is never changed, that is very solid, and I can always know the answer. Okay, but what that does is it shows an inability to participate with life and to learn life the same way that you'd balance and walk on a tightrope. Okay, guys? What if somebody said, I don't really want the experience of being a tightrope, to walk on a tightrope. I don't really want the experience. I want to be able to read a book and go into the guidance and know that if I read exactly that and I go on that balance, I will know what to do. I want a book that tells me about it. And what that causes is us not to actually participate in life. And a spiritual awakening pushes us to actually, through our experience, participate in life. It doesn't make us safer. it gives us the cojones, it gives us the balls to actually participate in life in a really adventurous way. So we can take peace and comfort in the known, but be willing to adventure into the unknown. So it just expands our ability on both sides, both to feel the bittersweet pain and to feel just the glory of life, to let go into our death phases and our life cycles and move into our life cycles in the renewal stages as well. And to understand that in the circle of life, it all has its purpose, and not to repress out the pain. People wonder why when they go through a Kundalini awakening and they feel this new energy and this vital energy running through them, and it feels just like mystical and magical, and they're in rapture. That is beautiful. But you have to be able to let that grace fall away too, and make it through the dark and have endurance and fortitude. In those higher heightened energy cycles, give us that little taste of something really beautiful, so that when we do come into full transformation, we have that more sense of peace and contentedness and ability to like just go out and explore life and let life through its experiences and lessons grow you and make you wise and weathered in the most beautiful way. Okay, babbling again. So let's get to number one now that I'm 25 minutes in, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. So number one myth about Kundalini awakening that I want to talk about is that Kundalini awakening is not, sorry, I'm looking for my thing that washes off the board. So guys, Kundalini awakening is not a religion. That's one of the biggest things that I got on my comments is like, oh, don't follow this religion. This religion is trying to deceive you. It's trying to promise you something. There's only one true religion. Okay, Kundalini awakening is not a religion, guys. It is a awakening. It is an energy that awakens from our root chakra and moves up the chakra system and connects us to our divine nature and source. Okay, I don't think you guys are going to be able to see very good on here, so I don't think I'm going to write it. I'm trying to see. Kingsley, can you please show me how to make this bigger, because I'm getting some comments that I want to be able to address here. And sorry, David, I'm looking into your comments here in a second. I just need my man to come and open the computer for me. Can you help me, because it's just showing this, sweetheart? I want to make this. Bear with me, David. Sorry. Beautiful. Okay, thank you, honey. Okay, David, hi. You're a little late. No problem. You notice in heavy meditation, there can be pain and nightmares, but it leads to something better. You're in a vehicle. No hurry. Exactly, David. So it sounds like you've been matured and weathered by the experience a little bit. One of the comments that I got on people is like, oh, yeah, it's all fine and beautiful. And what it will do is promise you all these special this, that, and the other, and they'll wrap it in a nice, beautiful bow, and then you'll realize that you've been deceived. And if you've had a Kundalini awakening, a spontaneous one, without knowing what it was, there's really nothing to be deceived about. What I did when I had the experience, and then I got a name for what I was going through right on time, because that's exactly how divinity usually brings it to us. Then I looked up what it was. Obviously, everybody, all the greats and all the instructors and the teachers that are here to tell us about what that entails. Then I looked into all the information and said, okay, this is what we're going to be going through. I had already gone through cycles of the dark night of the soul. So it's really good. What the experience usually does, if it's not a forced awakening, if it is a forced awakening through something like drugs, and a lot of people in my comment section compared their drug stupors to Kundalini awakening. And the thing is, with a forced awakening, that's usually what will happen in a drug stupor. And the issue with that is that it puts to sleep the ego, and that energy does rise, but we're not prepared. We don't yet have the maturity to deal with when it's going to open up, because it kind of unfolds us. And of course, all of us are able to handle the beauty, but not as many of us are going to be able to handle the pain that it comes with it. But each time we move through a repressed issue and we clear out something from childhood trauma or a false narrative that we had that we're only valuable for certain things or whatever our narrative was, when we clear those things out, it opens up into a new lightness and a new beauty. And that's why they call it a light body too, because after Kundalini awakening, you just can feel that you're just not carrying so much shit. So you're able to just like move with consciousness and move freely and dance with life and dance in and out of consciousness. And it's just a really beautiful thing. And you can just perceive life as a dance. So yes, smoke weed and meditate in places with nature. Absolutely. And I have no problem with people using something to aid. Especially, I hear weed. I was really never able to engage in much drug stuff. It would either be too much for me, like alcohol, weed, anything like that. It actually gives me insomnia. So it just happened to me that my design and my blueprints, it just wasn't made for that. But I know a lot of people, even Akasha, is that the name of like a spiritual journey that they go on with the drug? And I think anytime that we approach it with a sacred mentality and not an addictive mentality, or like, oh, I just want to experience something, you know, instead of kind of that youthful ignorance, which is fine. There's a reason why we have that in our life too, you know? So yeah, I have absolutely no problem with people doing that, but a full-fledged, as you probably know, David, a full-fledged Kundalini awakening in process is not the same as a one-time drug trip. 2015. Okay, David, I was 2016. I probably mentioned that at the beginning. Yes, when we are going through trauma stages, we need to back away from the meditation until we're able to handle those traumas, work through them, and become more grounded. So that's why, you know, we need to have the solitude. We really need to be working in correspondence with the universe to make sure that we're going ahead a little bit, maturing, taking another step. Sometimes we go 2 steps back, etc. The exercise time. Yeah, dance, absolutely. Like, I think just because of the years of dance and being able to express through there, I didn't have maybe a lot of the blockages that maybe other people might experience. Definitely a Kundalini awakening is the most physical form of spiritual awakening. It is a grounding of that earth energy with the divine energy. And so it is going to move through the chakra system. And sometimes people have a top-down awakening where they move from the crown down, and then hopefully during that time they're preparing their bodies. So actually, David, thank you for triggering that, because I'm going to go a little out of order here, but one of the things that I was going to say, I already said that Kundalini awakening is not Kundalini energy, and Kundalini awakening is not a religion. So guys, it doesn't require your worship. Okay. Religions, they always say like, oh, you know, are you going to forget about God once he does this and that for you? What are you going to give back to the church? What are you going to do? And there's a lot of fear mongering happening there, and there's a lot of control happening here. Our life force energy that we incarnated from, it doesn't need credit from us. We're already part of the divine. We don't really need to worship it. Although gratitude is one of the strongest vibrational energies that there is on this planet. So when we stop and we meditate and we say, we just go up the circuits of our body and we thank ourselves for being pain-free everywhere from our toes to the tips of our fingers. And we say, I love how my knees feel mobile and fluid, and that synovial fluid moving through. And I love how my hips move, and I love how my wrists move, and how God made our arms like the branches of the trees and made our lower body to be like the trunk of a tree. You know, if we're doing a body scan and we go up and down saying, this is beautiful here, and we're just emitting that gratitudinal energy. I just made up that word. If we're emitting that gratitudinal energy, That is one of the strongest forces there is. And quite naturally, if we're in a place of gratitude, we're going to be emitting that out to other people. And then it's just going to come full circle. So that is not to say that worship and approaching something in a very sacred sense is not a beautiful thing, but Kundalini awakening is not a deity. It doesn't need credit and it doesn't need worship. So I don't need to come on here and preach about how Kundalini awakening is the way, the truth, and the light. No, it's a process of human potential and evolution that is available to people if they want to experience it. So throughout our early years, we develop a lot of conditioning from our family and from our friend units that says, this is who you are, this is what defines you, this is what the world gives you credit and beauty for and value for, and this is what the world doesn't. So we build on all that conditioning. Then at the age of about 27, when the brain is fully myelated, although a Kundalini awakening can come at any time, we have an opportunity to throw off all that conditioning. And the next thing that I want to say about Kundalini awakening is that it works with conflict. It works with tension. Some people are so afraid to experience conflict and tension, but they don't realize how much energy that can actually lend to transformation. So what I mean by that is, as we start to take on our conditioning and our personality, it usually makes us smaller and smaller and more rigid and more tight. And we have to stay in that parameter. We have to act this way to get the value that we want here. We have to do this, that, and the other. And pretty soon we feel like we're so trapped in our idea of what's valuable in this world. We can take it from a celebrity status, like what we think is valuable in this world is going to be based off of what? Like beauty, who looks the best, who sounds the best, who has the most sex appeal, who has this, that, and all the others, right? So once we do that, and we, like, let's say, like Jim Carrey said, he said he's so glad that he got fame and fortune because he realized that those are not the things that brought him happiness. So clearly he felt rigid underneath that too. And so he had to break out of that. So for me, my tensions of my conditioning and the way I was supposed to live life and kind of the feedback loop of what I give the world and what it gives me back, it became too heavy. And so you work with that tension of what your mind and your ego mechanism tells you have to be versus the way that the transformational fluid energy of the divine nature truly is, which we can obviously tell is incredibly diverse. When we look at the world, we look at the ground and the sky and the darkness and the night and the animals and the humans, and we see all these different species. We can see that there's such a unique transformational energy around us, and we don't need to stay in those parameters. Life has so much more depth and beauty to offer us. And if we're emitting that and giving that out and pulling our tribe in, then we can go much deeper. So what I was saying about the tension is you feel just like it's getting, the ego mechanism is getting heavier and tighter. And eventually what can happen is we just get so constricted that we just kind of like bust out of it. So a lot of my kriyas were like an opening like this, because when the energy comes from the root, when it wakes up from there and it starts to move up the chakra system, it's pushing and pulling and pumping, and it's trying to break out of that casing, just like a cocoon, you know, just like a caterpillar in the cocoon is especially gonna say, like, I've overdeveloped this and I'm trying to like get out of this, you know, like the parameters are too tight, and it's both in a metaphorical and figurative sense, and it's literal. So the next thing I want to say about Kundalini awakening, guys, is it's not metaphorical. It's literal. There is this finite energy, this subtle energy that is, it's depicted as a snake coiled around 3.5 times. It's not actually a snake coiled around 3.5 times. It's depicted that in ancient times from people who could see in their third eye the best images to get to help explain what this subtle energy is going at the chakra system. It is not metaphorical. There's actually an energy within us that when it unravels and at death, it unravels and it returns back to source. But if we do take the chance to evolve into a Kundalini awakening in this life, that energy releases before death, unravels through all our conditioning up until that point in life, and gives us the opportunity to just unpack it all and throw it overboard and come back into touch with our open, innocent, divine, childlike, playful, happy, engaging, adventurous energy that is faith-filled and just vital in all its activities. David, thanks so much for coming in here. Raised Catholic. Okay. Ignored when people preach to me. I respect their views, but meditation, Buddhism, and Hindu concepts too. Absolutely. And the thing about, us awakening is like, we don't really feel the need to evangelize. But I think with religion, they truly do feel that if they don't, and some of it is really heartfelt and truly because they do have a belief system that makes them think like, I love you so much. And if I'm going to heaven and you're not going to be there, I can't stand that. I really want you to be saved. And I really feel bad for people who have really good motives in saying that, and it's such a purity of heart, but unfortunately it wasn't your divine intelligence telling you that. It was a book, and it kind of put that fear in that you have to behave this way, and it kind of just perpetuates that fear cycle and that control cycle. And so I never go on to religious videos or anybody who's working well with their religion or like Christianity, if they're delved into Christ consciousness. And I really, truly do love Jesus's message of non-judgment and love. But most people don't, unfortunately. They don't use religion to not judge and to transcend and to move into Christ consciousness. They actually use religion to feel safer in judging others and in feeling safe that they have it right in a form of superiority. So pretty much like what Jesus tried to preach to the Pharisees. And I really love Jesus's message, but there's so many amazing people, and we can't just get all of our spiritual satiation from one book. Surely there are words of wisdom in the Bible and so many other things, but other people have been inspired by God and divinity and have a lot to offer too. And I think that we'd really be ripping ourselves off just by going with one thing. Terrence McKenna, yes. Thank you, David. I really appreciate your presence here. Yes, absolutely. I think Jesus would have done great in the 60s. You're so great. Totally entertaining. Thank you for your presence, David. So guys, I've already said that Kundalini is not a religion and it doesn't require your worship. Okay. The second one, Kundalini yoga. There's something called Kundalini yoga and there's something called Kundalini awakening. Kundalini yoga is not an awakening. Kundalini yoga was something that somebody invented in all likelihood to prepare for awakening. So this actually leads me into the third one, which is to say that yoga, guys, was not created to cause an awakening. The reason that yoga was, sorry guys, I gotta sit down on my bum here. The reason that yoga was created was the gurus and the people who had been through awakening realized that when the energy comes flying through, people are gonna get put in all these weird, different, unique, and exotic contortions as the energy comes through. And our body needs to be able to physically sustain that. So that we can be able to weather that energy going through and what's happening to the nervous system. And one of the reasons that we have that sexual priming for 2 years where this nervous system is firing up like an engine and getting ready is so that when it does shoot up through the sacral chakra and clear through the rest of the chakras, it doesn't totally blow us out. It doesn't totally put us into adrenal fatigue in like the worst way. So, yoga was created by practitioners or by gurus so that when their students did have that energy finally flying through after they put their ego mechanism to sleep long enough, they put that ego mechanism to sleep, the energy went flying up, and their bodies were physically ready to take on that. So for me, I had been a dancer, I had done yoga through my life, but it wasn't actually yoga that led to my awakening. It was actually writing a book about a lady whose emotional repressions caused her to turn into a physical mutant. And in exploring that character and being alone with my thoughts and going on long walks and dancing many hours of the day for my job, but being in a pretty meditative state of mind, that energy was finally able to awaken, and I was 33, and it couldn't have been any earlier than it was because it already takes, once that energy plows through, it takes every facet of who you are to be able to get through that, you know? So, okay. Let me read a little here what you're saying. Yes, absolutely. I love the idea of Jesus being a hippie. Okay, I already said that it's not a metaphor. I already said for a lot of the people that said like, oh, you know, once you're going to run to the end of this and realize that it's not what promised, you know, make sure that you come back and you tell me like that you remember that I gave you this message and stuff. A lot of messages were saying that. And guys, I just want to say I wasn't promised anything. I had a spontaneous awakening. I was writing a book about a lady who transforms, and I'm just going to set up a little more comfortably here, guys. Okay, David, you remember when I would post videos of dancing with friends, so you'd often take me. Okay, right on. Yeah, I don't know if you were around for my Kriya, my just raw Kriya videos, but that's really what I'm trying to correct. I didn't have time then because I was absolutely like engaged in the process, and I knew that by speaking too much on it, I would be projecting my ideas of what awakening should be as opposed to what it truly was. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't short myself any of the experience by being defensive or having a prove it mentality. And at that time, you know, when a lot of people were writing stuff like, oh, you're severely misled, and just being like really condescending, I allowed those triggers to come through me. I let that pain come through and bring up energy of persecution and not being believed and not being accredited for the true experiences that I had. I let all that kind of pain come through and aid in my transformation and my evolution. But I didn't want to speak out of throat chakra too quickly until it was more matured. And so now I do have a lot more insights on it, and it's a lot more matured and grounded. I don't have nearly as bad of kriyas anymore, still a lot of vocal kriyas. My throat chakra kriyas are always in access. So those are always accessible. Still, the physical kriyas I can mimic, but it's not moving through those lower chakras anymore. I think it's mostly cleared the chakras, so there's not blockages. One of the big things that I got on some of my videos was people saying, at first I thought she was possessed, demon possessed. And then I saw her, they said something like that it was rehearsed. And they said because clearly she wouldn't be able to just go into it and channel it. And they projected all this channeling. But I never said anything about channeling. With Kundalini awakening, it's not something on our exterior that's coming in. It's something in our internal that is slumbering, that wakes up when the ego goes to sleep enough and dies down enough. So if we have a lot of rigid conceptual theories in life and that we're living by them, we're not likely to have a Kundalini awakening. And I think a lot of people get afraid. They're like, oh no, if I watch you, if I listen to you, that will happen to me. But if you have that strong a fear of something, it usually is going to be a protection to not have you go into that. And if you're really like grounded into your belief systems, it's highly unlikely that you're going to have a Kundalini awakening. So that doesn't need to be worried about. So the thing that I wanted to correct is with vocal kriyas, they're not a spirit energy coming in that's saying something. What it is a phenomena, a manifestation that comes and demonstrates that the energy is moving up through throat and causing rewiring in the brain. So in a Kundalini awakening, it's starting to rewire the left and the right hemispheres of the brain to not be in a dualistic state, but actually be wired up in a unified state. So you can tell that it's transcending. Like even language is a structure that we learn and that we all decided we're going to go by. But when the energy comes through, it's rewiring. It's transcending the conceptual knowledge. It's energy going through throat chakra, preparing to speak one's truth. But when the vocal kriyas come and it takes you into a meditative state of mind, it puts the conceptual desire to know and control the truth, and it starts to heal the human mind towards its more innate, natural state of unification. So all it is a manifestation, guys. It's not a demonic energy coming in and out. Let me read what you're saying here, Dave. One of the hardest things about spirituality and sexuality of getting the past blocks that they placed on our minds by society. Yes, yes. I'm sure it takes time. It is a lifelong commitment. People are always going to give you a hard time for how you dance. Yeah. Well, that is nonsense. What I notice about your dancing is very feminine. That is a woman's strength and my money. So yes, puritanical types. Absolutely. And David, I don't know if you've noticed this in your meditation and in your reading, but Kundalini energy is the divine feminine. It's a receptive energy. It is there for receiving. And one of the blocks, one of the main blocks that was being plowed through for me, because I had a very masculine energy. In my dancing, I was able to embrace, that's the first place that I was really able to embrace the divine feminine and open up, more rigid and blocked prism of my body to open up to the divine nature and say, I'm okay to receive. We really can't have a true, honest spiritual awakening and experience without being able to be receptive. That needs to put us on the receiver energy of the divine. So the divine masculine is the thing that we allow to come and overtake, really. And it's just like the spiritual energy, and we're on the receiving end. We're opening up and getting ourselves into a place of calm and quietness to receive, to be bestowed, to be initiated with the beauty of life's wisdom and insights. And what we need to do is get ready to receive. And for me, I was very much in my divine masculine state because I was an earner. I had my whole entire life, I'd been in fitness competitions. I worked for everything I had. I had a very prove it mentality. I was the earner, usually, of money. I didn't receive, I didn't accept much from anyone. However, in order for us to have a true, authentic spiritual awakening, we need to be able to open up and be able to receive from the divine. And in order to do that, we need to trust something bigger and bolder and beautiful and more intelligent than us. And to me, that's not hard to do, because you observe nature and you go, oh my gosh, even the way that our bodies are set up, our hearts are beating on time, our lungs are moving without, our food is digesting, like all the things that have to be orchestrated and in harmony for us, David, to even be sitting here talking and relaying to one another, not to even mention what is going on with our communicative abilities. All that stuff in the sun rising and the sun setting and everything staying in this divine harmonious balance. How can we think that we're the ones running the show? What the mind and the ego wants to do is it wants to come and take over and own and possess and control and say, I'm doing this on my own. And we're just missing out on just the true beauty and the life force and the divine earth life and death cycle by just clinging to that which we think we know when it's clear we know nothing. And the minute I think that we can admit that and come forward and say, I don't know anything, create me. You know, I always, when I first started having this awakening, I thought, here I am creating these characters in this book. And I go, I wonder if there's a force of divine nature that is making a creation out of me and everything. And then I realized it's, once you really drop those ego layers, you realize it's everybody. We're all on this journey together. And even those that seem in conflict with us are actually part of our creation. So this video that I'm even doing, responding to a lot of the, I thought rather judgmental, and I think a lot of them acted like they were well-intentioned, but then would say really like superficial surface level stuff like, oh, you're not pretty, or your dancing looks stupid or whatever. And I'm like, okay, let me just say that if you have a message that you want to send that you think is going to be not in a shallow, superficial realm, and it's about Christianity or Christ consciousness or divine love, then don't also in the next paragraph like ream on somebody's physical appearance or the way that they choose to express, because that really takes credibility away from anybody who thinks that they can convince another that they're actually approaching them in love. So a lot of comments were that, and so those I usually wouldn't even really interact with at all. When I had the energy, I would interact with comments that seemed like they were from a well-intentioned place, and that they were open to have a conversation. Oh, that's beautiful. How all the energy returns. Joseph Campbell talks about how all the energy returns to the mother place, kind of like Kali or an even more complex mother figure. And you bring those energies in balance. An unchecked ego can lead to too much pride and fear. Yes, absolutely. And if we're not fully engaging in the process to see what our pride and fear voice is telling us, we can easily be tricked into thinking that something that we're saying that we think is of a superior nature and of a higher quality is actually really coming from a lower evangelical, I need to prove that I'm right and you're wrong. And anytime we're in our judgment state of mind and we're attaching our ego to something that we just need somebody else to understand about what's right and wrong and good and bad, we're playing into our ego, because the ego wants to have higher knowledge. It wants to have superior knowledge. It wants to think that it is somehow in control. It just always wants to be in control. And so if we think we have all of life's answers, we're in all likelihood not engaging with life. And I've actually noticed this even in a lot of my Christian friends. When they first became Christians, they were like really like all about like, I have the answer and this is it, and just going forth and telling people they had the answer. And then as life kind of wore on them, then they matured and their wisdom kind of softened them. And even I noticed with my parents and different people who are getting older in my life, I mean, clearly we're all getting older, but those that were, you know, a couple decades ahead of me, I realized that in their older age, they soften, their ego softened, because they thought they knew a lot about life. When you run in and you're like, I got my shit figured out and I know everything. And then life wears on you and it starts to blur those lines that you thought were black and white and good and bad and right and wrong. It blurs those lines. And I think actually they may think it's a more uncomfortable place for them to be. And for the ego, it is. But for the spirit, it's a really beautiful place to reside. The book that I read right before the kind of walls fell out on my ego mechanism that I had been really carrying around my whole life. The book was called Our Soul's Plan, The Life We Planned Before We Were Born. No, Our Soul's Purpose, The Life We Planned Before We Were Born. And this author, he does past life regressions. And what he did was he documented a bunch of past life regressions. And what it did for me is it gave me a different paradigm for looking at life and being this in this incarnation than what I had previously been exposed to. So my whole entire life, I was born into Jehovah's Witness religion, David. I think you said you were Catholic. I was born as a Jehovah's Witness, and I had to rebel against that when I was about 14 because I realized like it was keeping me, it was saying like the world was bad and bad associations were bad. And it just really caused me to isolate, which eventually caused me to be suicidal. And so I had to rebel against that. And eventually I did find kind of some validation in team sports and stuff like that. And I got to experience a lot of camaraderie with my friends. But so once I kind of rebelled from the Jehovah's Witness cult mentality of right and wrong, then a lot of Christian people were waiting on the doorsteps to say, okay, now that was wrong and they taught you everything wrong, but now we're going to teach you everything right. And the paradigm was always, this is what you have to do to be good and honorable and pure and clean. And these are the things that will get you into a horrible punishment, consequence that will leave you in eternal torture. And so that was really the only life paradigm that I was given. And so when I did say, no, I'm not accepting that, and I really matured out of that, and I said, that can't be. I look at this world and I look at life, and there's just all these different things going on. That can't be it. So in this book, our soul's purpose, the life we planned before we were born, it talked about how we can plan out. As divine beings, we kind of planned out what we were going to do in this incarnation. So we even planned who was going to be our mother, our father, our boyfriend, or even our dog or anything. And we allowed certain people to be what we would think is a negative force in our life, like maybe to be born into a family that does not validate our self-worth, so that we are forced to find that self-worth from spirit, and we're forced to get that resolve and learn that self-love, not from an outside source, but to learn it from an interior resolve and then kind of move past that lesson. And by kind of agreeing to the rules of the game, then a new creation was flourished. And if you think about that, our consciousness is eternal, our spirit identities and our consciousness is eternal, then clearly it wants to like play and experience different things and learn different lessons. And it was talking about how we're here to learn compassion and bravery and transcending our ego and moving through life, knowing that we're all here for a human experience and we will experience fear, but there's something even bigger and more resolved within us. Once I saw the possibility for that paradigm, my ego mechanism that was holding everything in place kind of crashed down. And it really didn't matter in the scheme of things whether I was right or wrong about what happens after death, because the truth is nobody knows. Nobody knows what happens after this life. Most of us don't. Some people do have memories of past lives. I did have some past life kind of karmic experiences while I was in my Kriyas. But most of us from our conceptual minds can't remember what we were before we incarnated into this body and what we are when we're leaving. So I can only accept that that's part of the limitation that we took on when we got inside this vehicle, inside this design. And that by limiting who we are in the eternal, we agree to some sort of game that we're playing here. And so it doesn't matter really whether I'm right or wrong about this paradigm. What it was is that paradigm gave me the freedom to come into a different sort of creation. And that's what was cool about it. Oh my God, it's all about imagination and self, actually. The born-again Christian girls are very complex. They're into their faith, but they have just as much sex as David, you're so right. Oh my God. A person needs to be in harmony with their nature. Amen. Why would you be scared of your own nature? If I think that people, like you're saying with the Christian girls, well, I've observed the same thing. And what I realize is when they, even like the Catholic priests, when they repress that side of us that's our human nature, bad shit happens. So why wouldn't we just open up to that as a part of who we are? Clearly, if it becomes an addiction or out of control, that's a manifestation of something else was within us. But David, my friend, the freakiest women that I knew in my life were the ones that were Christian. Sorry, it's just true, guys. I'm sorry, that's just my experience. But the people who repressed sex and said that it was really bad were always the freakiest ones. And then there was me, who was expressing a lot of things. That I didn't lose my virginity until I was 22, but I was always really open about my movement and about sexuality. I really wasn't scared of it. I didn't think there was anything wrong or bad about it. It didn't scare me in myself, and it didn't scare me in others. But I had wondered why a lot of these girls that usually did, in my knowledge, flocked towards the Christian faith. It felt like they needed something to keep them pure. And I don't really understand what was going on there, but there was purely something there. So your observation is exactly the same as mine. A person needs to be in harmony with their nature. Suicidal, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that, David, that you experience bipolar manifestations. And I'm sure that you've learned a lot from that, and probably got a lot of wisdom and transcended a lot of those things. I think with highly emotional people, I'm highly emotional. I don't have any diagnosis of anything. But I think we do learn that even our emotions are to be transcended, that there's something even deeper and bigger and stronger and more eternal than our emotions. So I think that's one thing that we can learn from those kind of two extremes of bipolar energy, and to the best of our ability, making sure that we kind of reside in the middle and like ground into that life force that keeps everything in balance and check no matter what. I'm glad that you found the answers and path that work for you. Thank you, David. Yeah, it was extremely hard, and I'll talk more in depth about some of the suicidal issues that I had later. But I've experienced it twice in my life. Once when I was 14, and once towards the end of the dark night of the soul in my Kundalini awakening. And what was happening there is that a part of the ego is very desperate to die away, and it just feels like it wants to give up. And so we have that ego mechanism that we feel is giving up, and some aspect of us wants to give up, and we're so identified with it that we think it's us that wants to give up. But it isn't us. It's the ego trying to pull away and break away. And I was dying to so many of my old belief systems that it was a death. It really was a death. I didn't have to return back to source to have it, but it absolutely was a death. I'll talk more in depth about that later when I've been given the right intuition about what I should share in those regards. I hope we do have an afterlife. I did have two near. Oh, I'm not laughing about the near-death experience, David. I'm laughing because are you still friends with them? What, did you want me to hook you up with my Christian friends, David? Sorry, I think that's what you meant by that, because you put LOL, which just gives me a good hearty belly laugh. Like, send those Christian friends my way. I swear, man, when I was all dancing and acting wild and everybody's going, oh my God, that girl's sexual energy is out of control. All my Christian, sweet, innocent friends were off actually screwing. I was like, okay, but I'm out here on the dance floor. What are the rest of you are actually at home in your beds? So why are you judging me for my expression? Exercise and write, meditate, rather. That's perfect, David. That is really perfect. The stories I can tell you about the born again. Okay, good. Then you know firsthand. You know firsthand, David, that some of those Christian girls are the freakiest of the bunch. I didn't want to say it, but I'm sorry. That's just my experience. That is just what I experienced. I didn't project that onto it. It's just what happened. And I really think, David, that that's a product. Tell me what you think about that as far as them kind of being the freakiest one. Do you think it's a product of that they're trying to repress it? I think when something becomes a taboo, it automatically puts this like access energy into it, and you make it naughty, and then somehow it becomes more enticing. And it's totally back to this duality sense of like Adam and Eve and God coming along, or Satan coming along and saying, you can have all the trees of the forest except this one. And like whatever divine consciousness created us didn't know that when we go, you can have everything but this, that every human aspect of us, because we're inquisitive beings, we're adventurous beings, we want to grow and explore and learn new things, and we're never okay to just be like, oh, I've learned enough, I don't want to learn. We're hungry souls. We were made that way. That was our divine design. So why would we think, why on God's green earth would we think that anything that actually created us and knew the internal mechanisms of our brain would be able to be like, don't touch this? I mean, what happens if you do that to a kid? If you put all this candy in the room and be like, don't touch this yummy caramel apple, you know that kid's mouth is going to start to drool and its eyes are going to look over at that candy apple. We know how that's going to go. We've seen it with children, and we don't look at those children and be like, to hell you go. We don't think that way. We go, okay, I know you're a child and you're inquisitive, and when you see mommy and daddy doing adult things, if they get to be on their phone and they get to give the money to the cashier, the child's eyes automatically go to that which they don't get to partake in. So if we as humans can have enough compassion for a child not obeying because we understand that their minds are inquisitive and that's what's actually going to turn them into a amazing, smart, intelligent, responsible adult, why would the thing that created us not know that if we were tempted with this thing? So David, let me know if you think it's because of repression that some of these Christian individuals that we talk to, or is it because they already have that sexual energy and they're afraid that they're going to like lose control, so then they go to Christianity? So is it the egg before the chicken or the chicken before the egg? Do you know what I'm asking? I'd be interested to know what your insights on that are. You like the girls that you dated, you just didn't want to be preached at. And that's the thing about religion, unfortunately. Like I said, with what we've experienced, we don't need anybody else to have a Kundalini awakening. I don't need anybody else to do that. I want to explain my experience for anybody who's undergoing it, for anybody who loves me. I want you to be able to know what I'm going through, but I don't need you to have one. In fact, I don't know if I want to be on the receiving end of somebody having a Kundalini awakening, because I know what my loved ones had to go through. They had to really be a support to me, you know. I tell you, well, there is a hunter-gatherer kind of wolf pack mindset. So those groups tend to have an insane amount of sex. There's a book called Sex at Dawn. Well, I can only speak for the women I've been with. Okay, one example. Her name will be Rella. Rella. So Rella grew up in a more Asian background. Okay, I'm going to let you type out this story, and I'm going to go over a few more things in case I missed any. Okay, another thing that the Christian, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that, but a lot of the religious people came at me saying is, don't fall into this new age belief system. Guys, Kundalini awakening is not new age. It is ancient. It's been around since before your religion. Our human bodies and minds and spirits have always had the potential to engage in a Kundalini awakening evolution. We've always had this potential, but so long as we're there being controlled by a religion or a society or a sect or a group, we are not going to be able to come into our own power. And the divine masculine, the power centers of the world. And when I say divine masculine, guys, I don't mean men. I mean masculine energy that seeks for the ego-centered, like money, power, sex, control. So long as those things have always been in place in the 3D realm, there will always be people that try to control us from coming into our own divine, feminine, receptive powers. And so, guys, Kundalini awakening is not new age, and it's not something that I was like, that I identified with, and it was like, ooh, I think that will like fit my persona. I want to have the persona of a Kundalini awakening person. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what a Kundalini awakening was. I didn't know how to pronounce it. I didn't know how to say it. I knew nothing of the sort. So it's not a new age thing, guys. That's another thing that I got a lot. Nobody promised me anything. The father of all lies, Satan, didn't come to me and say, if you do this, you're going to be able to levitate and shapeshift, although I wish I could. And they didn't give me all these promises. Okay, Dave, I want to get back in your story here. Rella grew up in a more Asian background. She worked at Wall Street and she saw the most depraved sex acts. She told me stories about women having orgies in an office. Wow, wild. With cocaine, doing things I can't even talk about here. Wow. Wild. Okay. I'm curious to know how this affected her and what she told you. Ugh, I'm getting all, everything's all riding up here. But she became a born again Christian and she still had the same amount of sex. Okay, I'm curious about that. I'm going to keep reading when you get more on there. Okay, and another thing that, in case I haven't made clear already, but that I want to cover specifically here about a lot of the comments that I got, guys, it's not a demon possession. Nothing is possessing me. One of the things that a lot of people had questions about from a very specific one of my early Kriya videos where I was speaking in what they thought was tongues. I don't call it speaking in tongues, guys, because it's not something that's coming from the exterior in. It's something already in me. I call it vocal Kriyas. But they said that they heard me say the name Lucifer. But vocal Kriyas, guys, there isn't any, as far as I can tell, there's no conceptual meaning to any of it, and I've been doing it for over 3 years. It's always there. Sometimes it goes into toning. Sometimes it goes into toning like that. So, guys, it's not demon possession. Nothing's coming in and overtaking you and causing you to lose control. When you allow the ego mechanism to go to sleep, that divine vital energy comes up and it starts clearing through your chakra system. It's not all oogie-woogie scary as people think it is. It's absolutely in alignment with Mother Nature and Earth, and there's no reason to project all your fears onto everybody else. There's just no reason to do all that, especially if it's misplaced. At least know what a Kundalini awakening is, and that probably over half the people who have experienced Kundalini awakening had a spontaneous one where they didn't even know what it was. She just had to find, okay, but she had a born again Christian and she still had the same amount of sex. She just had to find an outlet for her energy. So I kept telling her she needs to find a way to let go, but I am going to admit I still fool around with her. I learned from her that we need sexual freedom so long as we don't hurt anyone. Amen. Amen. The hardest thing about sex is finding harmony with the power dynamic, because that power dynamic can really shit in the well. I'm all about balance. Sounds really wise, David. Absolutely. And I think men probably have, as a whole, not always the case because everybody's individual, but as a whole, men probably have different kind of lessons that they need to learn than women. I don't know what it is that happens in the mentality of the women that feel that they need to have this, they're only pure if they haven't engaged in sexual activity. I don't know what gets all like convoluted in their mind. I'd actually like to talk to maybe one that's willing to kind of open up to me about what ails them so much. Why is there so much angst and taboo and this dualistic feeling of temptation? Like, what do they think that it is that is so evil and naughty and bad about such a natural thing in their lives? I really think that is, when it becomes convoluted like that, I think it is really where people become addicted, and they make it this, tabooish, naughty thing that they like, says don't touch the fire, and you just have to touch the fire. And then it causes thoughts to be more obsessive than anything else. It reminds me of like an eating disorder where the food becomes taboo, and then eventually you just obsess on that thing and you give it more power and more energy than it should. Okay, so you learned from her that we need sexual freedom so long as you don't hurt anyone. You're all about the balance. It is very true. Women have that forced on them. Yes, bring those born again Christians over and get them worked out. I think it'll have to be your job to get them worked up, David. I am not really in my lower chakras hardly at all anymore. The pre-awakening stages between 2014 and 2016, oh my God, the sexual energy was actually straight up uncomfortable. I didn't release it in unpure ways. I had sex with my partner. I masturbated if I needed to. Mostly I was writing, singing, dancing. I allowed that energy to go ahead and stoke up and fire up that engine in the lower chakras and boom, 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 and then make its way up. And I was so relieved by about 2018, it had finally cleared the lower chakra energies and it went up to the higher. And David, I was so relieved. I was so incredibly uncomfortable. And guys, most of you, if you are going to go through a Kundalini awakening and you're going to go through the sacral chakra areas, if you're having a bottom up awakening as opposed to a top down, but either way, in all likelihood, you're going to have to go through that phase of sexual priming. So if you are going through it, or if you haven't been through it, or you think you're going to go through it, just know it can be extremely powerful. Those energy upgrades. Just take baths, walk a lot in nature, go out in the sun, sing, dance, write, pray, draw, do all the kinds of expressions you can, and just know that that energy will make its way up the rest of the chakras and disperse, and you will reach a time where the energy won't be all in crown and you'll be just feeling like you're not even in this body and dizzy and out of it, and you're just like another life form. And you'll just feel really back grounded in your body once all the work kind of resets. When the energy comes flying through, it's transforming you. So you're learning how to walk all over again as a human, and you go through childish phases. I went through for probably 6 months to a year. I talked like a baby because I was relearning as the new childlike energy came through from the chakra system. It's literally been sleeping in there. So some aspects of you have not tasted lemonade before, have not seen the sun. And I remember being like so giddy and so happy because a new level of consciousness is coming into you. And when I first saw my dog, I would wake up in the morning after an energy upgrade or some energy and make it into crown. And I would just see my dog and be like, oh, like you're so cute. Oh my God, I was like, look at your eyes and your ears and your nose and your tail. Oh, look at all you do is just shake your butt and dance. Like all you do is dance and you talk with your eyes and your ears and your nose. And I was just like totally infatuated with this, exotic creature that I had just seen last night, but the consciousness totally felt like I was a new being. It's not metaphorical. All right. So I don't think I covered as much as I probably was supposed to, but this was really great. Anyways, I prefer to do it like this, David, on these lives where I'm just interacting with people and we're just having our shared experience. That's my goal for most of these lives. The reason I go live is because I want people who are experiencing this and we can talk about different things happening in our life. I prefer it to usually be like this. Tonight I wanted to be a little bit more goal orientated because the people who I wasn't able to answer, a year or two ago when they were putting a lot of like, oh, I thought you said Lucifer or something in your thing. And the other thing, guys, if anything like the word Lucifer came out, the only thing that I think that my consciousness might have been saying, which I had said in English Kriyas at times, while I had Kriyas in English, they would say, you're always talking about Lucifer, you're always talking about Satan, you're always talking about demon. Don't you know that Satan is within you? The judgment, the fear, the control, all these aspects of you wanting to be superior. Don't you know that Satan resides in you? It's not an external thing. We project our triggers out onto something else so we can like slay the beast. But as we slay the beast and as we move in relationship with different people, it gets closer and closer and closer until we see that the fight that we're having is in our internal realm. And the divine nature just brings us people and triggers and different things in our life to move us through that phase of our awakening and through our transformation and what we're going through. So don't be afraid of that, guys. But I just did want to acknowledge the people who are afraid that in my speaking in tongues, which I don't call it speaking in tongues, I call it vocal kriyas. I'm not channeling anything. It's not a different energy coming into me. It's my own energy, my own life force that is doing a clearing process. I just want to acknowledge those people and say that I wasn't calling out to Lucifer. So that's been said. You never met me encouraging that. I like your sense of humor, David. Well, I like having that primal energy, but I don't want to be yes, David. Yes, let me read that out loud. I don't like having, I like having that primal energy, but I don't want to be a slave to it. That's exactly it, David. Everything that we experience in this life and in this world are tools, and they're there for our enjoyment. The same way food can be amazing. It can be a sensual experience. Intimacy and sex and connecting with another person. That can be an amazing experience, and my God, it's transcendent with the right person at the right time. But if we're a slave to that, I'm going to once again bring that back to eating disorder. It's fun to eat. It's fun to go out and connect with people through food. But once that food makes you their bitch, or in this case, David, once our sexual energy turns us into its bitch, well, we've got something we need to deal with. And I agree with you totally. Everything that's here for our human life experience is here for our enjoyment if we take it in the right balance. Everything in moderation. But the minute we notice that we're relying too heavily on food or sex or gambling or whatever, exercise, anything can be something that we use to distract from the pain that we're trying to repress. And so we can use that as a guide, as something to trigger us into going internally and finding out what's hurting us and what we can transcend so that everything can go back to balance. The balance being that when we sit down and have a meal, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's exactly as the divine created. The moment that we have sex with our partner or even engage in something with ourselves that feels sensual and brings us back into our divine nature and just makes us feel like a really elegant, beautiful thing, and not in a really transcendent, sacred way, not this disgusting, filthy, you feel disgusting after, you feel so gross and disgusting because you just used each other for your disgusting lower primal urges. But you said that so well, David. As human beings, I feel we want to return to our most carefree and creative. Sadly, we have a society that puts disdain on that desire to return to that. Yes, and there's a reason that we have that society, because the people in power want us to think that we need them to live, that we need them for control and answers. And so that's why we have authorities like that and power and religion, because they don't want us to find the answers to ourselves, because then we won't be buying their products. Then we won't, they're afraid that society will go crazy because they don't have their own conscience. They don't have their own divine nature that says, when I hurt another being, I'm hurting myself. And so another misconception about Kundalini awakening or spiritual awakening, people who want to move outside of the religious aspects, they say, well, what, are you just going to follow your own rules and do whatever you want? What, are you just going to hurt people and kill people and have as much sex and do it? And I go, no, I was already born with a conscience. I don't hurt others because it feels terrible for me if I make another person cry. I don't steal from another because it feels horrible if I know somebody worked for that and I just took from them. Like, my conscience was inbuilt. I didn't need the threat of a divine being judging me and saying, I see you, don't do that, you'll end up in hell. And actually, I'm quite terrified for the people whose only motivation to be good people were those who are doing it because they think they're being watched. Like, why do you need that as a motivation? Isn't it already inbuilt in you that it feels good to help others, that it feels good to listen and open up and be compassionate to others, and then it feels shitty when you hurt them? Isn't that already inbuilt? And I believe that once we start transcending, we don't need all those specific rules, because we have all our guidance and our intuition, and we start giving people the benefit of the doubt. We're not these like untrustworthy beings that are just like, oh, you're going to screw everything up if I just, with this sin nature. Like the sin nature thing never spoke to me. I didn't feel like a dirty, rotten piece of lowly shit that just wants to hurt other people at every chance I get. I didn't, it just didn't speak to me at all. I didn't feel like that. And I didn't want a paradigm that said I constantly have to fight a sin nature. I just don't like that. Yes, thank you for this. When will you do this again? Well, the sex acts that are disgusting and shallow can be good to the spirit if they are made into an act of defiance. What makes it gross is when someone does it for someone only. There has to be humanity there. Amen, brother. Yes, David. Thank you so much for your presence. Like I said, David, this is really what I want it to be. There was a few, like I said, I was being just a little more formal today than normal. I was trying to get in this stuff, but maybe I'll do a little video, like a 15-minute video quickly regarding all these things and just put that up for other people. But yeah, so David, I do the live about once a week. I call it Harmonious Happy Hour. So I don't know if you have me on Facebook. If you do, it's Angela Baird. If you type in Angela Baird Las Vegas, I should be the first one that comes up on there. I'm in a yogini pose with I'm in a push-up pose with my legs over my shoulders, and it's like a purple background. So I always announce it on my Facebook. If you have that as your social media, David. So I do it about once a week. I was going to have it a very specific time, but that just it didn't end up working well for me. So I just figured Spirit was trying to tell me to just do it when I felt abundant, but it ends up to be about once a week for the lives, David. So, oh, great. Okay, David Schubert, I recognize you now. Oh, I'm so glad you could join, David. Thank you. So I'll always announce it on my Facebook. All right, David, that's so awesome. I'm so glad you could join me tonight and that we could have this back and forth. That's really what I want it to be, is a discussion for all of us, and just we can lean into each other and talk about our experiences and just go ahead and go down that path together, baby. Okay, awesome. Okay, David, I wish I would have known that it was you before, because now I know. Now I get a little more context. David, it's so funny you're talking about that butt picture on Facebook, because I was like, you know what? You will think I'm shallow. No, I don't think so. It's so funny that we're having this discussion, because I realized, like, you have your tools in this world and you have your message. And I was like, I need to get people to know that I'm doing this live, because it's a deeper kind of soul searching thing. And I think it's a more in-depth thing that I have to offer and that I like talking to people about, even though you know from my Facebook that I like to just be lighthearted and have fun and act crazy and wild. You clearly know that. So I'm sure that's why you're comfortable to talk to me about that stuff tonight. But I thought, I have no shame about using the tools that I have to get my message across. So I don't mind at all that my little propaganda brought you in, because that's exactly what it was meant to do. Use your body as a weapon. I like to use my body as an instrument, not a weapon. I definitely use my intuition and my conscience not to use it as a weapon. Although I'm sure in my past, if I had issues in my relationship, I was tempted to do that. But I've always been a lot more heart chakra orientated, which people don't realize, because I am in touch with my divine, sacred, sexual. People always thought, for some reason, they always put that with like a bad person. They think if you're in touch with your sexual prowess, that you're like a bad or immoral person. But I've always been really heart chakra orientated. So you can be loving and sexual, people. You can have a warm heart and a warm. You love the winter? Oh, I don't. I miss Vegas. I've been here for about a year now, but it's been really good for my grounding. Thank you so much, David. You want to return to being better at meditation, and what you have said work. Absolutely. Yes, let's leave off on that. We can be sexual and spiritual. Amen, brother. Let the church say yeah. I agree 100%. And I don't know why people think that those are not in alignment with each other, why they always epitomize those against each other. It doesn't make sense to me. But all right, guys. So we went past our happy hour. So I want to thank David for that. Thank you so much for your presence and coming along. I'm glad my booty picture brought you here. Email is roughDog6. So it's spelled RUFFDAWG6 @yahoo.com. Maybe I can write it here so you can see it, David. So yeah, if you want to email me anything, you can tell me more about your experience. I still want to know a little bit more about your insights about what we were talking about with some of these women that gravitate. Yeah, you got it. You got it. That's the one, David. That's the email. Yeah, with some of these gals who gravitate towards Christianity, who are a little scared of their sexual prowess. I kind of like, my whole life I've been curious about that, but I didn't want to delve too deep because I didn't have a lot of like, I have a lot of women because I was a go-go dancer in the casinos in Las Vegas. Not a stripper, guys. Everybody thinks a go-go dancer is a stripper. It's not. We're in public in the casinos. We totally can't strip there in the blackjack pits. But I had great conversations and great camaraderie with women, but most of them were not really rigid about their spiritual beliefs. So I have never got any of these Christian friends of mine in the past to like open up about what it is that kind of makes them feel so dualistic about sexuality. I never got anybody to just be really open with me about what leaves them in such angst, in such a tortured mind about temptation versus purity, and why they can't just look to nature and look to the world and see that there's a divine balance. And animals, well, besides bonobos monkeys love doing it for pleasure, but animals mostly do it for procreation. But humans, we're such a special species that we have both our animal drives and lust and our divine spiritual hungers. And I think the older we get and the more weathered and wise we get, and when we've been in relationship with people of the opposite sex, I think we really grind on each other. We really grind on each other. I totally meant that figuratively, not literally, but the masculine and the feminine, they really teach each other. Like women, you know, instead of in our past, in our younger years being like, men are so visual. All they want is a sexy body. All they want is this, that. We start to be okay with the fact that men are set up different than us. And we see a beauty in that and a simplicity in it. And I actually love it, you know. But that's because I don't have any problems in my relationship that I think that I'm only the P word to them, that I'm only about the vajayjay. I don't have any insecurity about that because my partner makes me feel valued for everything that I am. And of course, it's wonderful to connect on that level. And actually, I'm going to say something a little personal right now, but when I was doing a lot of acrobatics, my vajayjay down there went numb. And it was a horrible experience because I like pinched, the doctor told me I pinched a nerve, like in my like hip, in my lower back. It like pinched a nerve. So it caused that area to go numb. And it was for a few months. And I was crying because I thought, this is horrible to be able to think that intimacy that I have with my partner, that I can feel pleasure when we meet up, when we, you know, in that such a, you know, vulnerable, special, private, personal, sacred area, we meet up and I can't feel the nerve endings and the enticement and the pleasure and the closeness. I felt so cut off. And it wasn't until then that I realized what a perfect, beautiful setup the divine made it to be for us to both experience pleasure from that area and connection, and how the connection related to the pleasure. And when I felt numb there and I felt cut off, I thought the most beautiful thing about sex is that both people get to feel the pleasure at once, and that lends to the connection. So I think when you become really okay with being both a earthly, physical natured person and a spiritual person, you just don't have so much beef and so much hang-ups and so much judgment towards other people, and everything just becomes a lot more chill and relaxed, and life just gets easier and more peaceful and less noisy because your brain isn't always there telling you to do this and act this way and tell other people to do this and act that way. It's just more loving, you know? Oh, this is really interesting. So it's more about privacy. So is it, I think you might have something here, David, because I think that's what it was with my friend. One of my good friends, actually, she had a real hang up about stuff like that. And it actually caused a divide in our friendship because I think she thought that I would judge her. And she wanted to maintain this kind of like purity, this virginal purity. And she thought that I would judge her if she wasn't that. But maybe it was just more about privacy. So yeah, let me know more about that, David. Email it to me or something if you have more insight about that, because I think you might know more than me from kind of probably being more with these women. Because it was actually one of my guy friends that gave me some insight to my girlfriend, because I didn't get it, but he didn't give me very much. Okay, I'm going to read this before I check out. Yes, people have to let go. You dated a lot of Asian and Muslim women, and privacy was a huge factor. So it is often the same with born-again Christians. Okay, so with religious women, privacy is an issue. Okay, well, that's cool, David. I think you're giving me some awesome insights. Yay! I'm so happy. I feel like fulfilled by this, that I'm going to get some. Look at that. That's just like a testimony that when you just like cast it out there and share your life experiences, that you're going to get some information back. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it will help me heal, because I did have a friend that I basically lost because she was really hung up on this purity thing and I didn't understand it. And I think she thought I judged her. And then she did judge me because she thought I should have more of a virginal countenance, and it was like affecting her reputation because she was friends with me or something. But that's a whole nother thing. But I think it'd be nice if I got some insights into her. All right, David. Thank you so much for your presence tonight. And thank you, everybody, for joining. It looks like I have a few people on here. So next week when I do this, guys, those of you, I always announce on my Facebook and my Instagram. So I think the easiest way to find me on Facebook is Angela Baird, Las Vegas. And I usually am the first one, I think, that pops up. I'm in a push-up with my legs over my shoulders, and it's kind of a purple background. So if anybody wants to find me on Facebook and friend request me so that you get notifications for when I'm going live, that would be great. And I would love for some of the other people present to speak up and let me know where they're at in their awakening, or where they're at even in their life at all, because we're all on the same spiritual journey. All right, you guys, thank you everybody so much for joining me tonight, and I look forward to doing this again. Thank you so much for your presence, David. Good night. Mwah. So glad it helped you, David. Good night, guys. Bye.